But that was one of the greatest moments of my entire life because I felt something inside. I felt a year's worth of hard work paid off. I felt I was 34 at the time. I felt 34 years of sports misery wiped away. Jose Mason, the ninth inning, the drive, the shot, the fumble, the Browns leaving town, the decision, all that nonsense in that moment disappeared. I had the tears flowing. I ran outside screaming and yelling. Everybody in my street's going nuts. We're hugging, we're kissing. Everybody's going ballistic. I run back in the house. My wife's crying. My daughter Maggie goes, to this day, every time she sees the Cavs, she go, Cavs win. Daddy runs outside, mommy cries. Like that is her reaction to that. And to me, I got like goosebumps on my arms. Like I just broke out in a sweat just talking about this. Like it is the greatest feeling I've ever had. You combine that with Father's Day. Because it was Father's Day. You combine that with my wife being 7 months pregnant. You combine that with me writing that book. You combine that with Michelle Beadle of ESPN Sports Nation agreeing to this is weird, but agreeing to eat my Wine and Gold History of the Cavaliers book I'd written 2 years prior. She was so cocky about the Warriors winning that she would literally eat my book on television, which she ended up having to do a few days later. So all those things going through my mind, all at once. I mean, I can't describe it. It was the most joyous feeling of all time. And now it makes you able to cope with everything. You know, a few months later, the Indians lost the World Series. A few months later, I lost my day job that I had. I worked for a company for a lot of years, and they got bought out. I lost my job. Again, like things always get put back into perspective for you. My mom, unfortunately, got real sick a few months ago, lapsed into a coma. She was in a coma for 3 weeks. She was on life support. She ended up coming out of it. It was a miracle. You know, she's walking again, breathing on her own.
Wow.
So all these things in your life come back to you in moments like that because you realize what really matters. But those are the types of things. Kyrie Irving hitting that shot, the Cavs winning, keeps me believing that I have a faith in God. I have a strong marriage. I have a strong family. Those are the types of things, to circle everything back to your question earlier about how do I find the time to write. That's how. Because I know deep down inside that it's going to matter. In the end, it means something.
All right, folks, Matt McQueenie, Mix Minus Podcast, and I'm happy to be joined, I think, for the third time by my Ohio friend, Vince McKee, who has written many a book about the Cleveland teams and sports, and he is the Senior VP of Sponsorship and Talent Acquisition, great title at neosportsinsider.com. Vince McKee, another Irish name as well. How you doing?
I love the introduction. Pretty good.
Awesome.
My mom is Italian, so my first name is Vincenzo, which is ultra Italian, and my last name is McKee, which is pretty darn Irish. But we handle all the Italian traditions. Basically, we like to eat and we like to love and argue. So all kinds of good Italian traditions, but I don't shy away from a beer and a corned beef on St. Patrick's Day either. So we go both ways.
That's true. I think the Italian food might be a little better. I'm going to go on that limb.
Very much so, trust me.
So I'm guessing you have some time open right now because you have had another child since we last spoke, I believe. What is it like having two kids?
It's a game changer. I love it. But it's definitely a game changer. You don't realize how easy it is only to have one kid until you have the second kid. And I'll tell you just a really quick story because I know we're pressed for time and everything, but super quick. I have to share this. So I'm a big UFC fan, MMA, my whole entire life. That's actually my bread and butter is UFC. It's the main thing I cover. And it came to Cleveland for the first time ever. The first time ever it comes to Cleveland, September 10th of last year. I got the assignment for Neo Sports. I'm there cage side. I'm excited. Couldn't wait, man. Just could not wait. Well, ironically enough, my wife is 9 months pregnant at that time. Her due date is September 12th. 2 days later, I'm getting ready to go to the show. She's having some stomach pains. I'm like, Emily, are you gonna be okay? Like, I probably shouldn't leave the house right now. And she's like, no, this is your dream. You need to go. You need to go. I'm like, I don't know about this. But I'm like, please just sit in bed, with our daughter Maggie, and don't do anything. And if you feel anything, call me right away. So I leave. I go to the show, sit down. I'm there for the first 5 fights. Looking around next to me, we got ESPN, we got Yahoo Sports, we have Ring Magazine, Sports Illustrated. I'm in the mix with all of them. I'm like, man, this is, I'm trying not to screw up, just blend in. And all of a sudden I look down, sure enough, the call comes in, water broke. She's on her way to the hospital. I leave, like a bat out of heck, fly to the hospital. I get there with 6 minutes to spare. She has the baby at like 11:54 p.m. on September 10th. So didn't get to see Stipe Miocic's knockout and CM Punk's debut that night, but did get to see my second daughter born, so it was all worth it. So there's a very long answer to a short question. Yes, I have 2 children.
I like it, and I have one, and probably looking at another. But I think I'd be interested. Just a quick thing before we jump into the reason we're talking. How do you handle your time now? I think that's the biggest issue is time management. With one, it's tough, but when you have that second one, how do you find the time to do all these things you're doing, to cover things, and then even have your own personal time?
Yeah, it's tough. I've slipped away from writing books. My main focus now, career-wise, is Annual Sports Insiders. What a lot of people don't realize, I actually have a 9-to-5 job I go to every day at a rubber company out here in Akron, Ohio. So I wear many different hats, but the good thing we have a strong support system. My parents watch my girls a couple days a week. My wife's parents watch the girls a couple days a week. That way we can both have our full-time jobs. And honestly, at night, I don't sleep. The girls, we make sure they're number one always. Our daughter's always number one. But, yeah, I mean, it's tough. A lot of nights they'll go to bed, and I'll be up writing or working, the second job until the wee hours of the night. So, it is what it is, but like I tell anybody, just follow your passion, follow your dreams, and know that if your heart's in the right place and you put your faith in God and you put your faith in yourself, anything's possible.
Absolutely.
Over this last year, I've begun to do things. Over this last year, I do things that I dreamt about as a little kid. Like I said, got to cover the UFC. They came to Buffalo back in April, so I drove to Buffalo, covered them there. I was on ice for the Lake Erie Monsters hockey team here, Calder Cup Championship celebration. I was there. The MAC Championship. Just all kinds of stuff. I can't. Last week, the Gold Cup. I recently got a side gig as the play-by-play man for the Cleveland Royals soccer team here, MDSL champions. So, again, when you're willing to sacrifice, when you're willing to work hard, these things will happen.
And I think you're probably burying the lead, which we'll jump into. You're covering a team who has been to 3 straight finals, won the 3-match against Golden State. So you wrote a really good article, which I saw, I think, on Facebook, come across the wires, and it was titled "Opinion: 3 Reasons Why Kyrie Irving is Right to Be Upset." And we bring this up because out of nowhere on a summer Fridays in July are supposed to be a time where we can leave work early, settle in, just chill out, watch some Netflix, and all of a sudden, whether it's politics, whether it's sports, things are hitting. And we saw yesterday that apparently Kyrie Irving, I think it was first reported by Brian Windhurst, is actively seeking a trade with 2 years left on a contract. And you wrote an article kind of because I think a lot of the feeling from people have been to criticize him for doing this. How could you leave a 3-time finals goer, and how could you leave LeBron James, the best player of the generation? And you were kind of like, no, there's a couple of reasons that I'm behind him a little bit. So why don't you kind of walk through that, because this is a bombshell.
Yeah, it's a gigantic bombshell. I think you've read in my article. Thank you. Basically, the way I see it, the most realistic reason is this. There's a couple, I'll get into them, but really the most realistic reason is this. Kyrie Irving does not believe LeBron James is going to come back to the Cavs after next season. I don't think a lot of people do. I don't think Chauncey Billups does. I think that's why Chauncey Billups didn't sign with us. I don't think it has anything to do with the money aspect of, Dan Gilbert lowballed him. I think that was part of it. But at the end of the day, I think that Kyrie Irving probably realizes right now that the Cavs only have 1 season left, that they're going to be a championship contender. He feels LeBron's going to leave again, and it's going to be a state of chaos. Now, it's coming across, it's going to be spun any way the Cavaliers want to spin it, any way the national media, Chris Haynes or anybody wants to spin it. They're going to try to spin it and make it seem like, Kyrie Irving is a selfish ball hog guy who wants to be the star and all these other things. And at the end of the day, I really don't think that's the main concern. I don't think that's his main reason for leaving or his main principle. This is a guy who I wrote in the article who was willing, 4 years ago, actually 3 years ago, like you said, July of 2014, everything happens in July.
Yeah.
But, 3+ years ago, this is a guy who said, hey, we don't have anything. We have like Deion Waiters and we got a couple other decent players, but nothing that great. And this guy, Kyrie Irving, he goes ahead, he signs a multi-year deal, 5-year deal, $multi-million to re-sign with the Cavs the first chance he got. It was midnight of that night. It was the earliest he could resign with the team instead of becoming a free agent, and he did it. He put full faith in Cleveland, full faith in the Cavaliers organization and the fans, and all of a sudden, a month later, LeBron James comes back. Well, two things there. LeBron James is not coming back to Cleveland. Get it through your head, everybody. He is not coming back to Cleveland. No way, no how, if Kyrie Irving doesn't re-sign with the Cavs like he did. Absolutely not. So by Kyrie Irving re-signing, he was the reason, one of the biggest reasons, I don't care how LeBron James tries to spin it, that was one of the biggest reasons. LeBron wanted to come back home and play with Kyrie Irving, bottom line. So he gets here, and LeBron doesn't hesitate to start throwing players under the bus, throwing owners under the bus, throwing Twitter under the, or not Twitter, but going on Twitter.
Throwing them too.
Yeah, them too, And it's Matt, I wish you were here so you could see some of this with me. The local media in this town, maybe not so much national media, but the local media in this town is so afraid to say anything negative about LeBron James. Ever point out the truth. Ever mention anything about, what he does behind the scenes. Everything's always off the record. But, at the end of the day, this guy holds this city hostage. He holds Dan Gilbert hostage. To me, I get so passionate about it and so irritated when I think back to the championship parade last year, this 4-hour parade. LeBron James gets on the microphone. He doesn't thank Dan Gilbert once. He doesn't thank David Griffin once. Not once. Okay? This is the owner. This is the GM who brought you back to town, said everything's forgiven. Let's make this right. You have 1.3 million people, allegedly, at this parade, and you can't thank the owner? And then we praise this guy, and people don't hesitate to throw Kyrie Irving under the bus and bash Kyrie Irving. And I'm sorry, but the guy's sick of it, and I don't blame him.
Well, don't you think, too, that when they brought up where the targets are, I think Chris Haynes was the one, or who knows who it is these days. It almost doesn't matter who's sourced at this point. But
Chris Haynes is a fountain of misinformation, but continue.
So we got Miami, we got the Knicks, we have San Antonio, and we have Minnesota. And I think, for me, everyone keeps saying, I think people maybe don't quite know exactly what's in Kyrie's head, or it's just the worst case scenario, which is that he thinks this is a joke, that this organization is a joke. And like you said, once LeBron goes, because you could easily say, well, if LeBron's going to go, play out this year, go to the finals again, and then you'll have the team on your own after that. But the fact that he's potentially looking at places that have players, it sort of has to point back to the team, right? I would say team 1 and LeBron 2.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You should have wrote the article instead of me, because that is perfectly said, and that was my point. Bottom line, this guy sees a fire sale coming next year. He doesn't want to be stuck at it. And like I said, the national media, the Cavaliers, they're trying to spin it and make it seem like he's ego-central and wants to be the star. He wouldn't want to go to these other teams with big names if that wasn't the case. Now, the Knicks, that's a different story. That one threw me for a loop. I don't know why. No offense, but I don't know why anybody would want to go play for the Knicks right now.
Well, he's from around here. You know what I mean? He's from, he grew up in West Orange, which is probably about 12 miles from New York City. And I think, from my point of view, the one thing I love that's happened this offseason is the NBA has been, in the past, like in history, I think it was Roosevelt, the trust buster, and he broke up all the trusts. And so the NBA had almost become these two mega trusts, the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and nothing else really mattered. And that's terrible for the NBA. And I think what happened this summer, and I feel bad for your situation there in Cleveland, although you did get the championship. You got three runs to the finals. But I think it's just been a decoupling, and it's made a lot of the NBA interesting. And my thing, selfishly, I'm not a Knicks fan. I was a Nets fan, and I worked for them, obviously. But I think Kyrie Irving in Madison Square Garden is like a necessity. And I think it gives him the ability to be out front, to be in the major market. And there's nothing like the Garden lit up. I know everybody outside of New York hates that, but that is a special place to have someone lighting up the scoreboard.
No, I agree. I agree with you there completely. And that's the thing, too. He's had some of his better games at the Garden. So is LeBron James. That's the mecca, of sports. Like, people want to play there. It's huge. Not to really spin this thing out of control, but honestly, big-time wrestling, WWE, Vince McMahon, they would have their biggest shows at the Garden. There's a reason, athletes of any kind want to perform there. I totally agree with you on that one. You think back to Mark Messier and the Rangers, and the list goes on and on and on. So I do see that. I see him being a bright light guy in New York. It just seemed to me If his sole purpose was winning, that would have been a strange place to go at this point in time. Now, if Porzingis is going to stick around, I think that guy's phenomenal. So anything could happen. But you look at that again. Phil Jackson left. That's another situation that's kind of up in the air right now. So, again, to me, it seems to me very truthfully that if they were to go to Kyrie Irving and say, look, stick this thing out for one more year, if LeBron doesn't resign, we'll try to bring in everything we can around you. We'll go back to that game plan we had for you 4 years ago and go from there. Who knows, how much of a spell that's going to be. But, again, the one point I made in my article towards the end was, if these guys are tight, if LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, if they're truly friends off the court, like we had to believe they were the last 4 years or 3 years, and now it seems like they're not, who knows, but why can't LeBron James just pick up the phone and call him? Why? Why can't LeBron James schedule a meeting with him, Dan Gilbert, Kobe Altman, the new GM here in a few days, and get everybody together and sit everybody down and talk this thing out? By him playing coy, by LeBron James playing coy and never ever coming out and showing his cards and saying, hey, this is what I want to do long term for the organization, it puts him at hostage. And he said that when he came back, he said, I'll never leave again, but it's just so hard to take this guy on his word. And that's the problem. You never had this in Chicago with Michael Jordan. You never had it with the Knicks with Patrick Ewing or Larry Bird with the Celtics, Johnson with the Lakers. You just don't see these types of things. You just didn't, I should say. You didn't see these types of things back when there was dynasties, and now you do, and it's strange. You look at Kobe Bryant, him and Shaquille O'Neal couldn't get along, and O'Neal left. The Lakers had some thin years, but then Phil Jackson comes back, and they rattle off 2 more championships. So if LeBron James was the league again, it wouldn't get death sentence as long as we were prepared.
Well, and I think you brought up a great point, too, in that LeBron, everyone's given him this business credit for the last couple of years going, you know what, I'm just going to sign the 1 year deal or the 1 year deal with the 1 year opt-out. I'm going to continue to do that because the team has to prove to me. But that's a really bad ethic because then it shows a non-commitment on the other end. Like you had said, sign the long-term deal. If this is where you're going to, if this is where you're going to stay in your big Bath Township mansion and you want to be home, you write the big Sports Illustrated article, and hey, look, if Sports Illustrated goes under in the next couple of years, no one will remember. But write the big. You have the big article. You have the big noise about coming home, and I think there's a part of LeBron that almost exalted in the media attention that he got around that, and just how positive everything was. It was like the Lion King almost, the big moment with Simba and all this. And I think when he got back to home, and then it's January or February, and you're playing another home game in Cleveland, I think he's not getting the adulation he feels like he should get every single day, and that's not how life works. Like you just don't get that all the time. So you have to be okay with where you are, and I think you're right. He's caused this unintended consequence where you have a guy who just turned 25, who hit the game-winning shot in a Game 7 a year ago, who now wants to leave. And I think with Kyrie, a lot of it has to be his agent. The fact his agent was in that meeting with him, and I think only an agent can read the tea leaves around the league. I mean, Kyrie doesn't have he's 25 years old. He's been in the league for how many years? He's played under LeBron. It's not like he knows the 4 places he wants to go. That is an agent driving that discussion. So that to me speaks measures about where Cleveland is with their front office, and I think there's a lot of people to blame. Again, I think it's organization one. Just sign up David Griffin. Don't play games. Keep him in the fold. Don't go past your skis or whatever they say. And 2, it's LeBron. You need more commitment. Everybody, they always say success has many fathers, right? And failure is an orphan. And I think there was so much success, and all these different entities felt like they weren't getting their due. And I think ultimately, Dan Gilbert is like, I'm not getting my due. I'm backing all this. But as an owner, you got to kind of be a silent partner and be quiet. And they needed to sign up David Griffin. Just keep him in the fold. Stop this nonsense. And you need LeBron to be like, you know what? I said this is where I want to be. I'm not going to keep this game going. Let me just sign a long-term deal here. If he wants to get out in 2 years, he can make hay. He can make a lot of noise. He has more followers than the NBA does. So I don't know if that's true, but you know what I mean. I mean, he can get out if he had to. Sign the long-term deal so there's certainty.
I thought you were about to say Jesus Christ, honestly.
Well, we've already said he threw Twitter under the bus, so.
It's true. I swear to God, the words Jesus Christ were about to leave your mouth. I'm like, okay. But no, you hit it right on the head. You really do. I mean, you understand that, and that you are a guy who's not from Cleveland. You're a guy who could sit back and look at this reasonably with a clear heart and a clear mind and not be emotionally invested. You could honestly see this thing, and that's why I'm enjoying this conversation, and that's why I agreed to come on your podcast, because it's 100% right, my man. Everything you said is 100% right. A lot of this could have been solved simply by keeping the same mixture of people together and working through the problems. If you would have kept David Griffin here and so on down the line. And like you said, sometimes as an owner with Dan Gilbert, you know what? You are responsible for 95% of the success. But when you're an owner of something, you pretty much get zero back in return when it comes to people praising you. It just doesn't happen. And it's a sad fact, but it is what it is. But you know what? Dan Gilbert could go swim around in his money pit like Scrooge McDuck if he wanted to. And at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to. LeBron James, two things about LeBron James. He tries to be this ultimate businessman. I'll always be here about how great of a businessman he is. But at the end of the day, he needs to be an athlete. He needs to be a teammate and a leader and a champion and a warrior on that court. No pun intended in being a warrior, but you know what I mean. And he doesn't do that. He didn't do that the first time he was here. He hasn't done it the second time he's been here. He just wants to keep surrounding himself with the drama, these passive-aggressive comments that he makes, instead of just coming out and saying what needs to be said. For years and years and years, Scottie Pippen played second fiddle to Michael Jordan, and he might have not always been the happiest to do it, but at the end of the day, Scottie Pippen can sit back and look at those 6 rings that he won with Jordan and be more than happy. And I guarantee you, at the end of the day, Kyrie Irving would feel the same way. Kyrie Irving's this stick of, like you just said, you just hit it on the head a few minutes ago, the unstableness of all of this, not having the secured front office, having the constant drama. And at the end of the day, I truly believe that is really what is driving most of this for Kyrie Irving. And like you said again, he doesn't really care what team he goes. He maybe does now because the agents put it in his mind. But and a player doesn't come to an ownership team or a GM meeting and say, okay, I want these 4 teams. That's coming from an agent. That's coming from me and you have both been around these guys for long enough to know that's coming from an agent.
Yeah, it's totally true. And the crazy part is he put Miami there. Miami's de facto best player right now is Deion Waiters. Didn't they have a fist fight?
Yeah, exactly. They did. Allegedly, they did. But yeah, they did. Like, I don't think anybody on the record or off the record is going to deny that one anytime soon.
And, the other thing I was thinking is maybe you were bringing up the point LeBron could get on a plane, go wherever Kyrie is. Do we think it's possible that LeBron told Kyrie something?
Oh, yeah. I think LeBron probably told him he's not coming back. I think it's a strong possibility. Or just sometimes you say, I've used this in several of my books, and it's the saying that I use a lot in life, with family matters and different people in my life. Sometimes when you don't say anything at all, you're speaking volumes. When you refuse to answer a question, when you refuse to give somebody praise, when you refuse to even acknowledge anything, you're speaking volumes, because your silence is saying everything they need to know. It's very, very true. And by LeBron James being completely quiet and not saying anything to Chauncey Billups when he called, probably David Griffin when he called, I'm sure Kyrie Irving reached out to him. By him not saying anything at all tells you all you need to know. You look back to Tom Izzo, years ago, 4 or 5, 2010. Good God, I'm getting old. 7 years ago,
right?
When it's crazy. But yeah, it's 7 years ago.
Yeah.
When the first time LeBron was going to leave, and Dan Gilbert fired Mike Brown, and they were going to bring in Tom Izzo, and he even said, "Look, the head coach of Michigan State." He said, "Yeah, I'll do it." He's like, I need to be reassured that LeBron James is coming back. So let me call him. Let's get this going and get this reassured. And by James not doing that, we know what happened in the next 4 years in Cleveland. It was hell.
Now, interestingly, if you're coming from the Cleveland fan and you're an analyst of Cleveland sports, what do you think? Let's say LeBron does go to the Lakers next year. It's not going to be the burning jerseys and effigy, right? Like you fool me once, you fool me twice. And I don't even know if he fooled him the second time. He's really given a certain portion of his prime back to the Cavs, back to Cleveland. Do you ultimately fault him? What's the percentage of fault? Is it 50-50? Is it? I mean, you're not as broken up about it this time. The fact he came home, he brought the championship. He'll presumably bring 4 straight finals, and they'll probably lose again next year just because that's how good Golden State is. But where do you stand there?
Yeah, Matt, I can't speak for other fans. I can only speak for myself. I'll try to speak for other fans here. I'll give you 2 answers to this question. I think the general fan base in Cleveland would be upset but not nearly as much as they were last time. I don't think there would be any kind of burning jerseys. I don't think there would be, everything that there was last time. If he goes about it respectfully, signs with another team, holds a small press conference, goes about it that way, I think everybody's going to be mad for a couple days, and then they'll get over it. They'll go downstairs in their basements like I'm sitting in right now, staring at a wall with championship gear on it, with plaques of, championships and that he brought here. And I think at that point, everybody will take a deep breath, remind themselves, hey, this is a Browns town. Hey, the Indians were just in the World Series last year. Okay, life goes on. Last time, we didn't have that. LeBron left his team, and we had so much hope, and I wrote about it. And, please go out and buy the book, The Redemption of the King by LeBron or by Vince McKee. I talked a lot about this. He left the city in despair at that time. When he left in 2010, the Indians were horrible. The Browns were horrible. Well, that go figure. But, we had nothing else going on. So that was it. That was our one hope, that LeBron James was finally going to bring the championship. And at that time, he didn't. And that is why everybody was as furious as they were. We flashed forward all of our life, 7 years later, myself. We talked about it in the very beginning of this conversation, my friend. I am now a husband. I have 2 daughters. I have a mortgage. My life is so completely different than it was 7 years ago. Like a lot of people's lives are so completely different than it was 7 years ago that I really think we can now look back at it if it happens again and be able to adjust a lot better than we did last time. I'm just speaking for myself when I say that, but I truly believe a lot of sports fans would be able to feel the same way. I know, way back in the day, growing up being a Browns fan, guys like Bernie Kosar, how heartbroken I was when he left the Browns. He got cut. That wasn't even his deal. He just got cut. But, looking back at those types of things, it hurts at the time. But in the general scope, that's what's great about sports. The next season is only only a couple days away. The most boring day of the year is always the day after the Major League Baseball All-Star game because there's nothing going on. That is the worst sports day there is. You have the ESPYs. That's it. Yeah. I don't even watch those. So, again, like that, it's just one of those things where, your life, my life, you're talking about having a second kid. I have 2 kids. It's better to put things in perspective than maybe it was. I'll let something out of the bag here. I'm not a heavy drinker. I barely drink alcohol. Just saying it because it's the truth. The night LeBron James left, I drank myself to sleep. That was one of the few times in my life I literally remember bringing the 12-ounce can up to my mouth, and the next thing I know was the next morning I was waking up.
What would you drink? What was it?
Coors Light. I was living in this little apartment at the time because, again, I was saving up to get married and have a wedding and buy a house for me and my future wife. And I was living slim, my man. I was living real slim.
Yeah.
So I remember walking up to the gas station after the decision, and I was already feeling already 3 sheets to the wind. And I remember buying like another 12-pack or something, and I was like, this night ain't ended well, So that's a little story not too many people know, but now I guess everybody knows. So but long story short, this happens again. He leaves again. This time I'll drink a Gatorade or maybe a bottle of lemonade or something, and I'll snuggle up with my 4-year-old daughter and my 1-year-old daughter, and I'll forget about it about 3 minutes later. But that's just me. Again, I cannot speak for everybody.
So the final thing I would say as we're coming up against our we with these responsibilities, I'd love to go with you for 2 hours here, but we just cannot anymore. I've been wondering, as a lead up to my final question, I've almost been wondering, what if he retires after next year? Because I think I'd be afraid if I'm him going on, let's see, he'll be 33 next season. He'd be going into 34 with the expectations of a god as you're potentially on the downswing. I mean, gosh, he's got to get a downswing at some point here. And you probably see some concessions to age as you watch him nightly. But what if he retires? Like, I keep thinking, what if that's the end game?
Matt, let me ask you this. I'm going to answer your question with a question. Okay?
Yep.
In your home, do you own an Emmitt Smith Arizona Cardinals jersey? Do you own a Michael Jordan Washington Wizards jersey? Do you own a Jerry Rice Seattle Seahawks jersey? No.
Nope.
Because the same reasons I don't own any of that crap. Because those guys, okay, that's some of the greatest players in their sport. All right, no one is ever going to deny that. I don't see LeBron James going that route. I think I see him, when he knows it's over, calling it quits. I don't see him doing the Kobe Bryant farewell tour. I don't see that. So to me, I think, he knows his body better than anybody else. He takes phenomenal care of his body, the likes of which I've never seen before in an athlete. He's a genetic freak. Looking back on it, I would say he probably has enough legs left on him to be effective and to be one of the best players in the game for the next 3 to 4 years. So if he retires after next season, yeah, I'd be shocked. But what I could see him doing is playing for another 3 years at the most, retiring at 36, and calling it a day then.
Yeah.
35, 36, then calling it a day. What I don't see him doing is playing until he's 40 and trying to break every record there is. I know the competitive side of him would probably want to do that, but I just don't see him being one of those guys that is going to keep hanging on to try to break records until he gets to the point where he's not one of the top. His ego, I'll say it. His ego is too big. His ego is way too big. I just don't see that happening. I hope it doesn't happen as a sports fan, as a sports writer, and just somebody, again, it is what it is. Joe Montana wants to play 2 years for the Chiefs as their quarterback, and, he was effective. He took the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game in 93. They lost to Buffalo. But, again, he's one of the best football players of all time, in my opinion. But some of these guys, they know when to call it quit. Basketball is a different sport because it's not nearly as physical as football, but at the same time, you're doing a lot more than you are in football because it's nonstop, back and forth. Whereas in football, it's plays of 6 or 7 seconds long. So again, and it's a 16-game season as opposed to 82, and then 10 months worth of playoffs. So that's a loaded question. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I was 21 years old when LeBron James was a senior at St. Vincent St. Mary. So it's just one of those crazy things when you look back at your life and you look back at everything. It's like, man, I was alive for this guy's entire career. I remember it all clearly. Like, I can't say that for Jordan. I remember 95% of Jordan's career, but I don't remember him playing at North Carolina and things of that nature. Maybe that's a sign of me and you getting old. I don't know, but
yeah.
it is kind of free. It is kind of freaky to look back. I mean, would you agree with that and be like, wow, I remember every detail about this guy's career.
I always think about that. Yeah, I mean, you're ever present for everything that's going on, and I want to leave this on a good note. Not that we've had bad notes. We've had a really good conversation. I want you as the constant Clevelander, living there the whole time. Just walk us out on your feelings going in and through and finishing Game 7 last year.
Oh gosh, my pleasure. That's the best note I can leave anything on, other than talking about my 2 little girls. Game 7 was on Father's Day. And the night before, again, at that point, my wife, Emily, would have been about 7 months pregnant. We had my parents come over to my house the night before, and we had them watch my daughter, Maggie, who's my best little buddy. Everywhere I go, Maggie goes, So, but I said, hey, Mom and Dad, me and Emily, we need a night alone. Like, we never get any alone time. So we went to a hotel the night before Game 7. And I was writing this book. It's called All In. It is and I'm trying not to get emotional because it's just, every time I think about the story, it sticks my heart well up. But it was the night again. So I'd worked on this book for a year. After we lost to Golden State, I got contacted by Skyhorse Publishing in New York to write the Cavaliers championship book for the following year, saying, hey, if they get back to the finals and win it, can you get us a championship book within, 4 hours of that game being over, right? And so it's the worst, my man. Like, just the way it goes. So I was working on this thing with no guarantee, no money down, just working on it like crazy for a year that saw a head coach fired, a year that saw Tristan Thompson hold out, a year that saw Kyrie Irving's girlfriend claim she was going to commit suicide or some nonsense. I mean, it was the most drama-packed year I've ever seen. We get all the way to this point, and I remember telling my wife in that hotel room, I said, Em, I'm like, because I wanted to write the ending of the book, even though they still had a game to play. I'm like, I'm going to write the last chapter right now. It's going to be a make-believe chapter, but I'm going to write what it means to Cleveland if we win tomorrow night, knowing that there's a chance no one's ever going to see this book. A lot of road teams don't win Game 7, especially against a team as good as the Warriors. 73 win Golden State Warriors. I told them, I'm like, look, I've written my tail off for a year straight on this thing. I'm going to write the ending tonight. Obviously, I can't talk about a game that hasn't existed yet, but I'm going to write what it feels like. So I did. And the next day comes around, and we're watching the game, and I'm not emotional at all. Like 3.5 quarters in, I'm sitting there, I'm watching. I'm thinking like, it'd be cool if this book gets published. It'd be cool if we finally win this championship. And then Kyrie Irving hits that shot. and I just lose it. Kyrie Irving hits the shot with 53 seconds to go, and I'm like, oh, my God. I'm like, we're going to win. I'm like, I can't believe this. We never win anything in Cleveland. Like, this is unreal. You know, and then the rest of the clock files out. We win. Everybody goes nuts. And it was at that moment where it was one of the greatest feelings next to watching both of my daughters born and my wedding day. Those were definitely top three. But that was one of the greatest moments of my entire life because I felt something inside. I felt a year's worth of hard work paid off. I felt I was 34 at the time. I felt 34 years of sports misery wiped away. Jose Mason, the ninth inning, the drive, the shot, the fumble, the Browns leaving town, the decision, all that nonsense in that moment disappeared. I had the tears flowing. I ran outside screaming and yelling. Everybody in my street's going nuts. We're hugging, we're kissing. Everybody's going ballistic. I run back in the house. My wife's crying. My daughter Maggie goes, to this day, every time she sees the Cavs, she go, Cavs win. Daddy runs outside, mommy cries. Like that is her reaction to that. And to me, I got like goosebumps on my arms. Like I just broke out in a sweat just talking about this. Like it is the greatest feeling I've ever had. You combine that with Father's Day. Because it was Father's Day. You combine that with my wife being 7 months pregnant. You combine that with me writing that book. You combine that with Michelle Beadle of ESPN Sports Nation agreeing to this is weird, but agreeing to eat my Wine and Gold History of the Cavaliers book I'd written 2 years prior. She was so cocky about the Warriors winning that she would literally eat my book on television, which she ended up having to do a few days later. So all those things going through my mind all at once. I mean, I can't describe it. It was the most joyous feeling of all time. And now it makes you able to cope with everything. You know, a few months later, the Indians lost the World Series. A few months later, I lost my day job that I had. I worked for a company for a lot of years, and they got bought out. I lost my job. Again, like things always get put back into perspective for you. My mom, unfortunately, got real sick a few months ago, lapsed into a coma. She was in a coma for 3 weeks. She was on life support. She ended up coming out of it. It was a miracle. You know, she's walking again, breathing on her own.
Wow.
So all these things in your life come back to you in moments like that because you realize what really matters. But those are the types of things. Kyrie Irving hitting that shot, the Cavs winning, keeps me believing that I have a faith in God. I have a strong marriage. I have a strong family. Those are the types of things, to circle everything back to your question earlier about how do I find the time to write. That's how. Because I know deep down inside that it's going to matter. In the end, it means something. So does that make sense?
100%. And it's why even as you get older and maybe you lose the same magic you had for sports growing up, you learn the characters, and maybe the characters aren't the people you thought they were or what they were positioned as, but that's why we keep coming back. There's no magic like sports magic. So this has been a magical discussion, and that was a great answer. Vince, it's been great talking again, and I know we will do it down the line again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I could, I just wanted to thank you. You touched on a good point there. And if you have, 2 more minutes, I just need 2 more minutes to tell one more quick story.
Sure.
Is that cool?
Go for it.
All right, then I got to pack my bag and everything else here. Real quick. Sports hero. This is how I feel about that. And I'm telling this story for a reason because, again, it goes back to my faith. I wrote a book called Bernie, Bill, and the Browns. All right? At that point, I had written 7 previous books that had been published, none of them on the Browns. And I figured, okay, if I write a book on the Browns, it won't be easy to get published. It's hard. It's really hard to get a book published. I don't think people realize just how stinking hard it is. But I thought, okay, so I interviewed all these players, and it was the 10 years, the book encapsulated the 10 years before the Cleveland Browns left town. So from 85, when we drafted Bernie Kosar, through 95 when Odell moved the team to Baltimore. Had all the players. The late, great Michael Jackson. I interviewed him. I interviewed anybody you could really think of from that area. Tommy Vardell, Leroy Horde, Brian Kinchin, again, Michael Jackson, Felix Wright, Reggie Langhorne, Brian Brennan, everybody except Bernie Kosar. And I said, look, I got to get a hold of Bernie Kosar. No matter, and I got a Rolodex like you want to believe, like most sports writers. But I had no connections to Bernie Kosar. So I worked. And for months, I would call him. I'd leave messages at his companies. I'd leave messages at his casino. Anything I could, his restaurant at the casino. Anything I could do to contact Bernie Kosar I did. The man never got back to me. So then he has a signing at Summit Mall in Akron, Ohio. I go to it. I live in North Olmsted, which is about an hour from Akron. I drive there in the cold, blistery winter. I stand in line. $25 to meet the guy. I've never paid a dime to meet any athlete in my life. This was the first time I had to. I was desperate. Pay $25. I get in line, wait in line for 2 hours. Get to the front of the line. Bernie Kosar, Vince McKee, sports writer. Nice to meet you. I got a copy of all my books I'd written to that point. I had a copy of my resume. I gave everything to him. I said, Bernie, I talked to all of your teammates. I need to talk to you. I'm writing a book about your career and that 10-year stretch in Cleveland. And he goes, it's going to cost you. I'm like, what? He's like, it's going to cost you. And I thought he was joking. He was dead serious. The man, okay, I've never paid a dime. Never a dime to anybody. The man wanted $10,000 for an interview. $10,000 for a few minutes of his time. I gladly declined, walked away. That was the end of it. Couldn't get the book published. A couple months go by. Yeah. A couple months go by. I'm driving to Little Italy here in Cleveland, Ohio, and this tool community called Little Italy. As we started the phone call again, things circle back. I'm Italian, so I'm getting honored by the Italian Brotherhood community here in Little Italy. A really cool function. You know, they honored me. It was awesome. It was a great night. We're driving there, me and my father, who I brought with me as my guest. My dad's driving. All of a sudden, my phone rings. Comes up a number I don't recognize. It says Foxborough, Massachusetts, with a number, 508 area code, I think it was. Foxborough, Massachusetts. Who the hell's calling me from Foxborough, Massachusetts? Pick up the phone. Hello. Head coach Bill Belichick. Is Vince McKee there? This is him. It's Bill Belichick on the phone. Bill Belichick proceeds to give me the next 45 minutes of his time. An awesome interview. Awesome human being. Excellent stuff he had to say about Cleveland, about the Browns, about everything. For free. Didn't charge me a dime. No way, no how. Phenomenal. And again, the book ends up getting published. It did okay. But, you know, I look back at everything now and I say, would I want an interview with Bernie Kosar or would I want an interview with Bill Belichick? And look at what happened. If Bernie Kosar would have did that interview months beforehand, I could have finished the book there, turned it in, it would have been done. Never would have got that Belichick chance. But I had reached out to the Bill Belichick Foundation. He somehow got the message, and he called me.
Wow.
There you go, my man.
I mean, you just never know. Crazy characters. I mean, I only had to give you 500 to come on this one, so.
Yeah, right.
Not, but you know why? Because it was priceless, Vince. Thank you, and I do want to talk to you about some other things in the future, and we can keep the conversation going at another point, but you have to break off to go cover some minor league game for your site. And and I will have to get a toddler up from nap pretty soon. So,
enjoy that fun.
Thanks again. It's been a blast talking about your experience with the Cavs and life and sports.
Thanks, brother. Anytime. Okay.